nation's history as well as in dealing with the issues we face right now. Join us Saturday afternoon at 2 Central here on American Family Radio.
Do you think any intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, are out to get you?
Well, certainly in the past.
I was critical of his words in Helsinki. I thought he had a poor performance at the podium, but his actions are the opposite.
For the last 70 years, Moscow has been trying to undermine our democracy, including our elections. But it only became an issue for the left and the media now.
There's no question that President Obama was more cooperative with and collaborative with Russia and the Russian agenda than President Trump. President Trump has sent lethal arms to Ukraine. President Trump has bombed the Assad forces in Syria. Trump undid the Iran deal, which Russia favored, while Obama worked with Russia in order to do the Iran deal.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to a brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable as always. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. A lot we're going to get to today, as always, but as we typically do, want to turn our attention at the beginning of this program to the Word of God. And what I want to address myself to in particular today is people who have somebody, you have somebody in your life that is enraged with you. I mean, they are furiously angry with you, and they're actually in a position, they've got enough power or influence or whatever to hurt you, to do some damage to you. And I want to address these words from Isaiah 41 to you. I know I'm speaking to some in this listening audience that are in that boat. Others of you know people that are, and you can pray for them and so forth, using some of the concepts from Isaiah 41, which is where our reading has taken us. Now, just to set the backstory here, what we find from Isaiah's writings here in Isaiah 41 is that God is clearly in control of human history, which means he's in control not only of the history of nations, not only is he in control of every international event, he's also in control of the circumstances that come in to your life. Now in Isaiah 41, Babylon was at this time ruling the world, but God was in the process of raising up someone to come in mighty strength and to defeat Babylon and set the people of Judah free from tyranny. Now it says in verse 2, who stirred up one from the east? That is a reference there to Yahweh, the true living God, the God of Israel, rousing up, stirring up someone from the east, planting in his mind the idea that he should go to war against the king of Babylon. The Bible says that God stirred him up, roused him to action, put this thought in his mind, put this impulse in his heart to go to war against the king of Babylon. And this king he's talking about, the one he raised up, stirred up, is a man by the name of Cyrus, ruler of Persia, of what is today Iran. And Isaiah makes it abundantly clear this is the Lord's doing. He says in verse 4, who has performed and done this? I, Yahweh, I'm going to use his name here, his proper name throughout this chapter. I, Yahweh, the first and the last, I am he. He doesn't want to have people have any doubt that the one who sent Cyrus against the nations and against Babylon in particular was Yahweh himself. Now, everybody was shook up at this. According to verse 5, the coastlands have seen and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They knew the might and power of the armies of Persia. So what did the people do when faced with this terrible threat, this menacing threat? Well, some of them depended upon idols. But Isaiah says, look, that's just moronic. That's just silly to do that, because it says in verse 7, here's what they did with their idols. They strengthen it with nails so that it cannot be moved. So Isaiah's laughing at him. You're placing your hope in something that you have to nail down so it won't fall over. How is something like that going to be able to help you? So an idol, for our purposes, is anything other than God that we trust to get out of a jam, to get us out of a jam. Anything other than God that we trust to get us out of a jam, that is our idol at that point. So anything that we've made, anything that man has made, any man, regardless of whether he's made anything that we depend on to get us out of a jam, that's our ultimate source of hope, and that makes him an idol to us at that point in time. Now, God says to Israel, you don't need to be afraid. When this storm comes, a storm is coming, you don't need to be afraid because you are my servants. In fact, he uses servant to refer to the whole nation. You, people of Israel, you are my servant, and I watch out for my servants. It says in verse 9, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you off. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. You know, when my legs were at their weakest, they're getting much, much better. I'm getting close to being back to normal now, so they're doing much, much better. But there was a time when my legs were so weak, it was literally a case where I would have to say I've fallen and I can't get up. One time, and Rob and Jeff know what I'm talking about, one time I was out here at the copy machine by Rob's office, and I pulled some pieces of paper out of the printer tray, and I dropped them. So I crouched down. You know, you get in a half crouch. That's pretty hard on your legs. It puts some strain on them. And I'm crouching down there to reach down on the floor and pick up all of these papers, and my legs started to give out on me. I couldn't stand up. They weren't strong enough for me to stand up. So I just kind of slid down the wall and landed on the floor right on my keister. And there's nothing I could do. I couldn't get up. So I'm hollering out to Rob. Rob was the one whose name I called in that moment of distress. And he grabbed Jeff, and sure enough, they came and took me by the hand and lifted me to my feet. So that's what God says. You call my name, I will do the same thing. I will strengthen you. I will reach out, take you by the hand, and pull you out of that jam. So even though this thing is coming, even though you've got somebody in your life that is extremely angry with you, God says the people coming against Israel are incensed against Israel, furious with Israel. But in the face of that, we can have a quiet, steady faith in God. Favorite definition of faith I've ever heard is that it is the refusal to panic. That's faith. A refusal to panic in the face of a menacing threat because you know that God is with you. God is on your side. So God promises you hang on to me in a time of that kind of threat and pressure. I will see you through. Verse 11, behold, all who are incensed against you shall be put to shame and confounded. Those who strive against you shall be as nothing and shall perish. At one point in verse 14, he says, fear not, worm Jacob. That's not an insult to Jacob, because a worm is a symbol of something that's about as weak or as powerless as anything can get. Doesn't have the strength to defend itself against anyone. The Lord says, if you're in that place, don't worry, don't panic, because you have what it takes to face this, because I am the one who helps you. Well, let's take these things and go to the Lord in prayer. Lord God, we worship you this day as the Redeemer and the Holy One of Israel. You are the one who makes rivers flow on barren heights and springs within the valleys. You turn the desert pools into pools of water and the parched ground into springs. I pray today in Jesus' name that you will be a redeemer for me, for my family, for this listening audience, for everyone in the sound of my voice right now. I thank you for choosing us to be your servants, and I pray that you will never reject us. I ask you to be with us so that we will not give way to fear. May we never be dismayed because you are our God. Please strengthen us, help us, and uphold us with your righteous right hand. Please be our Lord and God. Grant us the assurance that even though our own strength may be little, you yourself will help us. Amen.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for a health care plan, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medi-Share. Medi-Share is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medi-Share members have shared more than $2.5 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medi-Share. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings may be less or more, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join Medi-Share anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Just hit *345. That's *345. *345.
Now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go toward the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place." My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. At the height of a Holy Spirit outpouring in Samaria, where the gospel was being preached with great power and droves of people were converting to follow Christ, the Lord instructed Philip to leave Samaria and head south to Gaza. Philip didn't know a divine appointment awaited him. Through his ministry to the Ethiopian eunuch, the gospel would spread to Africa. He left the crowd to serve one. I call this step-down faith. It's easy to step up for the attention and applause of the masses, but do we have step-down faith?
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Just lead off with a few stories here that are sitting up at the top of the stack. You may remember when Maxine Waters, remember when she gave that speech, that rallying cry? Brian Fisher is my name, by the way. Network is American Family Radio Network. The program is Focal Point. Oh, I want to mention again the programming note that I went over yesterday. Leadership here has made a decision to shorten my program by 1 hour to make room for Stacy Washington. The transition will take place on August 6th. So you'll be able to hear Stacy on the right after the first hour of this program on AFR Talk. This, by the way, does not have anything to do with my health. Some people are wondering whether my health is driving this. My health is fine, getting a little bit stronger every day. So just an update, that transition is going to take place on August the 6th, if you want to make a note. Now, remember, Maxine Waters went on that rant, and she said to her supporters, I want you to get in their face everywhere. I want you to accost Trump people in grocery stores. I want you to accost them in line at the movie theater. I want you to get right up in their grill. They're out shopping for groceries. I want you to get in their face. And now she's worried about protests that might be coming against her. There's this group called Oath Keeper. She's got nothing to fear physically from these people, but she wants to make people feel like she is in danger. She's worried about armed protests. She's warned her supporters don't get baited into counter demonstrations or confrontations. So again, she can dish it out, but apparently she can't take it. Now here's an interesting, the left, they're looking for any way that they can to drum up additional revenue. New Jersey now is considering a proposal to tax tap water, the water that comes out of your sink. Now, the guy's trying to say, look, it's not a tax, it's a user fee. You know what a user fee is? It's a tax, ladies and gentlemen. So they're looking to do that. And let's see, where's that? Yeah. Here we go. Blue states, the blue states run by Democrats, the richer states. We're talking like Connecticut, New Jersey, and Maryland, and New York's governor, now Andrew Cuomo's joined them. They are suing the federal government because of the tax changes that they made at the end of last year. Remember, these are the ones that lowered the taxes of 81% of the American people, reduced corporate taxes from 39% down to 21%, which is the main thing that's driving this boom. I'm telling you, this economic boom that we're seeing, the main thing that's driving it is a drop in the corporate income tax. That money is available now to expand, to purchase new facilities, to hire more workers, to increase the pay of the workers you have. That's the thing that's driving this boom, is that cut in the corporate tax rate. But it limited the amount that rich people can deduct on their federal income taxes for state taxes and for property taxes. They can't do that now. And so it's taken tax revenue away from these states, so they are striking back. And the interesting thing to me, they are, in their arguments, they are focused on the 10th Amendment and on the 16th Amendment. 16th Amendment is the one that inaugurated income tax in the first place, and we've talked about that before. I have no idea if this is part of their argumentation or not, but the 16th Amendment, when it used the word income, that meant everything but wages and salaries. Everything but wages and salaries. When it was passed in 1913, your wages, your salaries, your paycheck wasn't going to be touched by the income tax. That wasn't income in the definition of the day. It referred to interest income. It referred to corporate income. It referred to dividend income. It referred to corporate income. So the kind of income that rich people would have from their investments. It basically was investment or dividend income. But sure enough, it wasn't long before people came along, changed the definition of income to refer to wages and salaries, and all of a sudden you and I got caught in that mess. And they're talking about the 10th Amendment, which is a states' rights amendment. So all of a sudden, you have these regressives discovering the 10th Amendment. You know, when we talk about the 10th Amendment, you know, we're retarded, we're going back in time, this is outdated, you got to get with it. But now they have discovered the wonders of the 10th Amendment. Speaking of the economy, weekly jobless claims in America are lower than they have been in 48 and a half years, indicating that the labor market has strengthened even further. Fewest jobless claims in 48 and 1/2 years, the Trump economy continuing to roar along. You know, we've talked with you about San Francisco and the problem that they have with human waste. You know, they've got a map for tourists. So if you're a tourist to San Francisco and you want to avoid all of the deposits of human waste that are concentrated in the downtown area, then there's a map that you can follow. So if you're going to go on a stroll after dinner or whatever, or you're going to walk from your hotel to the wharf or something like that, then here's a map that will enable you to navigate around all of those piles of human waste. There's NBC, the NBC affiliate in the Bay Area did an investigation on 153 blocks of downtown. Here's what NBC discovered. And, you know, we've mentioned this before, but San Francisco is losing convention income. You know, tourist income is huge in San Francisco. That may be their number one source of revenue. People who come to San Francisco, that's where I took my whole family to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary, Debbie and I. By the way, when I told you that story about how I kind of fell to on my keister, my legs wouldn't hold me up, and I had to call for Rob and Jeff to come and lift me up. On the break, Jeff said, yeah, we lifted you up, and we've been carrying you ever since. So that's the kind of encouragement, support I get from my team.
We love you.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah. And that's how you show it? Sure, I'm believing that. Anyway, just kidding here. Anyway, but this NBC...
And you do know why we didn't say that on the air. We said it during the break.
So that...
Debbie wouldn't hear.
Yeah.
And notice, Debbie,
yeah,
Jeff said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Jeff was afraid that he was going to get a text from the executive producer And Rob, with a similar concern, is making sure that everybody, including the executive producer, knows that came from Jeff and not from him. Anyway, so NBC Bay Area, they're looking downtown, 153 blocks. They discovered, quote, trash on every block, 100 discarded needles, those from druggies, and more than 300 piles of human waste in this 153 block of downtown San Francisco. So they went to the new mayor. They got a new mayor. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to enact stronger penalties or penalties for littering? And she said, quote, I didn't express anything about a penalty. She wants to just be nice and hope that people will clean up after themselves. And the John Phillips is the writer of this piece, and he says, I got an idea. You've got a program in San Francisco where the city has a gun buyback deal. You bring them a handgun, they'll pay you $100. You bring them an assault weapon, no questions asked, $200. And so he is saying, well, what about a $100 gift card to Crate and Barrel to everybody that brings, a deposit, to clean up the street. So anyway, that is his solution to the problem.
I was looking at that story as well. I've got a few numbers that are kind of interesting about this. San Francisco is now reportedly set to spend $280 million in the next budget to fight homelessness. And doing the numbers on that, that's an average of $37,300 each for each of the 749
homeless people.
Yeah, 7,000. So that worked. I mean, you're talking about
$37,000
a year.
$37,000 a head?
Yes. Yes, for
Holy
each
smokes.
homeless person in San Francisco. And then if you break that down even farther, if you wanted to figure out 40 hours a week, it's almost $18 an hour to be homeless.
Man, where's the incentive with that program?
Well, who knows where it's actually going to be spent, but that's actually, those numbers are astounding.
Yeah,
37,300.
Yeah, you'd be better off just giving them the money and go find a place.
Yeah.
Come back next year, we'll give you another $37,000. Go find a place.
That was amazing.
I mean, that's sort of like, they basically got enough money with the homeless people to do that thing that Stockton is doing and Chicago is thinking about doing, have this universal guaranteed basic income. You don't have to work.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. You don't have to turn in bags of whatever. We'll just give you $37,000. I mean, in Stockton, it's like $500 a month.
Oh.
This is like $3,500 a month. That San Francisco got their act beat altogether. By the way, the executive producer has in fact
I knew that was coming.
weighed in.
My time on Focal Point just got reduced by 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm losing 1 hour. Jeff and Rob, they're losing the whole deal. That's gone.
Yeah.
Now, here's what she says. She says, hey, I am thankful they are helping to carry you. My back is sore from doing it all alone.
Wow.
All right, so everybody, okay, it's just gang up on the host day. That's what it is. Whole
That's
team.
a good one, Deb.
Gang up on Brian Day. By the way, Texas, if Texas was a nation, next year it would be the world's number 3 oil producer behind Russia and Saudi Arabia. That's how effective and the oil industry in Texas, how well it is doing. They're pumping so much oil that they're going to leapfrog Iran and Iraq, who are members of OPEC, and they'll only be behind Russia and Saudi Arabia as an oil producer. So this has to do with fracking and some of the other technological advances that we have discovered. My home state of Idaho is in the news. I'm going to give a call to a good friend of mine who works on pro-life legislation. Planned Parenthood has sued my home state of Idaho over a new law which was passed. The legislature is very conservative there, one of the leaders in pro-life legislation. And the new law in Idaho requires physicians to report a patient's complications that result from an abortion. So this was just good medicine. Now, here's a medical procedure that's performed all the time. We want to know what kind of medical complications Result, infections, blood clots, psychological conditions, sleeping orders, depression. Planned Parenthood said, we do not want people to know what abortion does to women. And we're going to sue you to keep that stuff under wraps. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. As the liberal establishment has a hissy fit over the possibility of Brett Kavanaugh becoming the next Supreme Court justice, they are proclaiming that his confirmation will lead directly to the outlawing of abortion in America. This is totally untrue. If the Supreme Court did overturn the infamous 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, would abortion be illegal? No. We would revert to the situation before Roe v. Wade, when each state legally decided under what circumstances a woman could obtain an abortion. Some states, New York, California, Massachusetts, would be very liberal. Other states, Louisiana, Utah, Texas, Alabama, would be very restrictive. Overturning Roe would put the issue back into the hands of the people's elected representatives, instead of having unelected judges mandating public policy through court rulings. That's called democracy. Recent polling shows that a majority of Americans want that situation. They want their elected representatives to decide the abortion issue in their state, not have it imposed by unelected judges from Washington. If Roe's overturned, then we will have the opportunity to make our case and seek to protect unborn babies in our states. Now, would that satisfy me? No. I will not be satisfied until not only Roe v. Wade is on the ash heap of history, but the American people have been so convinced of the heinousness of abortion on demand that they will pass a human life amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which will grant all the protections of the law, including the right to life, to unborn babies. I believe the only morally valid reason for an abortion is to save the mother's physical life. Otherwise, the baby must enjoy all the protections of the law. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net. afa.net.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Let's get a few sound bites kind of in the mix here today. Oh, by the way, speaking of San Francisco, they have begun registering non-citizens and illegal aliens to vote. They are giving voting privileges. This is just for education elections, school board elections, but that's just where things start. You know, they're not going to be content with that. There's no way that's going to be as far as they're going to try to push the needle on this deal. So San Francisco is allowing people that don't even have the right to live in this country to select their own leadership. I mean, this is insanity on stilts. You know, and you know who's meddling with American elections? It's not Russia, it's Mexico. It's illegal aliens that are meddling in our elections. Now, if you think that is a brilliant observation, you can credit it to me. If you think it's offensive, then I want you to know that Ann Reed, Jeff's wife, suggested that to me this morning.
Really?
Yeah. So if you like it, it's mine. If you don't, then you can pin it on Ann. But I thought that was really insightful. Who's messing with our elections? It's Mexico. You know, they're just flooding this country with illegal aliens, illegal alien criminals, illegal alien drug dealers, illegal alien human traffickers. They're the ones that are meddling, and the Democrat Party, open arms, welcoming them in, trying to get them the franchise as soon as they can because they are counting on illegal aliens to vote Democratic. That tells you all you need to know about the Democratic Party. They don't care about illegal aliens out of compassion or because they've got big hearts. They do things for illegal aliens to get votes. It's all about political power for them. Do not let them lie to you. Do not let them deceive you that they're the ones with a heart. They're not. They are just looking for political power and getting illegal aliens registered to vote. I mean, it starts in San Francisco, but it's going to spread. I mean, there's another jurisdiction. I think it's a major city in the east that's also allowing illegal aliens to register to vote. Now, we still have a little bit of fallout from the Trump-Russia summit, the Trump-Putin summit. I want to start with a soundbite from a guy named Paul Kengor, K-E-N-G-O-R. He's a professor at Grove City College, and he is talking here about a guy by the name of William Bullitt. This is not the guy, this is not Steve McQueen's dad or anything like that. By the way, they found the original 68 Mustang that he drove in that movie. They reconditioned it, refurbished it, and they did they kind of did a reproduction of the chase scene here not too long ago in San Francisco.
The Bullet or something like that.
Well, the name Steve McQueen, his name was Bullet in the movie.
Oh, okay.
He was a detective. I don't know what the name of the car was if it had one. But anyway, that is completely and utterly irrelevant and a complete waste of valuable broadcast time. So let me refocus here. Now, Grove City College, by the way, is a very conservative. It's one of the great colleges, higher education in the country. And this Professor Paul Kengor, he's a sharp guy, knows his stuff, and he is talking here about William Bullitt, who was FDR's first ambassador to the Soviet Union. So this is FDR, a democratic icon. And remember what the criticism of Trump was. He was Putin's poodle. He's a lapdog. Putin is his puppet master. He's an intelligence asset. Putin knows how to leverage him and to manipulate him in getting something for absolutely nothing. Now, we saw that Obama was the master at that. Anybody that acted like a poodle got taken advantage of it would be Obama because he did nothing virtually to push back against Russian aggression. But here's the Democratic icon, FDR, and Kengor is talking about an exchange he had with his first ambassador to the Soviet Union, a guy by the name of William Bullitt. Let's listen.
Bullitt spent a few years in the Soviet Union, and he came back. He was awakened to kind of the death stench of Stalinism. And he warned FDR. He said you cannot trust Stalin, and FDR told him, and this is a direct quote here, Mark. He said, "Bill, I don't dispute your facts or the logic of your reasoning. I just have a hunch that Stalin is not that kind of a man." And FDR said this of Stalin: "I think that if I give him everything I possibly can and ask nothing from him in return, noblesse oblige, he won't try to annex anything, and Stalin will work with me for a world of democracy and peace."
Okay, there you go. That's FDR's strategy for taming the Soviet Union. Give him everything he wants. That's Stalin. This is a guy that killed around 30 to 50 million of his own people. One of the great mass murderers of all time. And FDR says, I got that guy figured out. All I got to do is give him everything he wants, and he'll be a good boy, and he will cooperate with us, and there won't be any Soviet expansion. And boom, as a result of that policy, we got the Russian bloc, the Soviet Union bloc in Eastern Europe. Those people still digging out from under Russian oppression from those years. Now, this is clip number 2. I think I've got another clip I want to use in connection with this, Rob. Okay. Let's see where. I think it's down in the Greenwald clip. Let's go down to clip number 5. This is Glenn Greenwald. He's not a supporter of Donald Trump, doesn't like Donald Trump, thinks Donald Trump basically is a monster. But he's with an outfit called the Intercept. And let's see, I got 2 clips I want to use here, and I'm trying to find them. 5 and 6. Well, now there's one about talking about what he was doing in Syria. I think maybe it's the. I'm sorry to be doing this on air in the middle of the program.
Isn't that the one where the guy's talking for a list of different things
that
he did?
It's a list of the things that Trump has done. Where is that?
That's
okay. Well, I'm going to have.
Let's just play them all and
eventually. Yeah, we'll just clip 4. Yeah, we just play them all. Eventually, we'll run across it, and I'll say, "Oh, that's the one."
Yep.
Okay.
That
well,
was
this
Cortez
is,
and Cuomo.
Okay, this is Steve Cortez, and then we'll play the Glenn Greenwald clip behind this. Steve Cortez is on CNN as a political commentator. He's on with Chris Cuomo here, and this topic of who's tougher against Russia. You know, and this is what the media is babbling about right now, is that they believe Obama was tougher on Russia than Trump. Trump's just a poodle. He's got no backbone. He can't stand up to Putin. That was a travesty. He lowered the prestige of America in the eyes of the world and all that stuff. So they think Trump's weak, Obama was strong. Here is Steve Cortez on with Chris Cuomo, clip 4.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think in your last segment, I think you asked for, I believe the word you used was the signature move to show that he's serious in confronting Russia. I'll tell you the signature move. It was the United States military in Syria literally slaughtering hundreds of Russian mercenaries in the battlefield. So that, I mean, if nothing else tells you that he is serious about taking on Russia when it's an adversary to the United States, that certainly does. This is a president who, and listen, I was critical of his words in Helsinki. I thought he had a poor performance at the podium, but his actions are the opposite. And in terms of the actions, and I think there's a lot of actions that show his toughness against Russia, I can think of none, no, more serious than actually taking on paramilitary forces from Russia and, again, slaughtering them in the field of battle in Syria.
Okay, so that's what Trump did, sent our military in to slaughter hundreds of Russian paramilitary forces in Syria. You want to look at somebody that's tough? That's not something that Obama ever did. Now, here's clip number 5. This is Glenn Greenwald from The Intercept. This is on a program called Democracy Now!, far-left media. And so think in the background here of the position of the left that Trump is just Putin's puppet as you listen to Glenn Greenwald talk. And remember, he is no friend of Donald Trump. He's very critical of Donald Trump. Let's listen.
No, I mean, I'll believe that when I see evidence for it. So let me just make 2 points. Number one is, if you look at President Obama versus President Trump, there's no question that President Obama was more cooperative with and collaborative with Russia and the Russian agenda than President Trump. President Trump has sent lethal arms to Ukraine, a crucial issue for Putin, which President Obama refused to do. President Trump has bombed the Assad forces in Syria, a client state of Putin, something that Obama refused to do because he didn't want to provoke Putin. Trump has expelled more Russian diplomats and sanctioned more Russian oligarchs than Putin has. Trump undid the Iran deal, which Russia favored, while Obama worked with Russia in order to do the Iran deal. So this idea that Trump is some kind of a puppet of Putin, that he controls him with blackmail, is the kind of stuff that you believe if you read too many Tom Clancy novels, but isn't borne out by the facts.
That's pretty compelling. So you get in a conversation with somebody. Part of what I want to do on this program is I want to outfit you to be able to engage in conversations with people. You know, I look at this as 2 hours, well, eventually 1 hour of cultural apologetics. I want you to be able to defend a conservative point of view in conversations. You want to defend the Trump economy? You can use the fact that jobless claims are at a 48.5-year low. You want to defend Trump on his relationship with Russia. Here are some of the facts that you can use. The number one thing, just keep in your mind, is what Trump has done on the battlefields of Syria, sending our troops in to kill Russian troops. That's mano a mano. That's USA troops versus Russian troops right there in Syria, and Trump sent them in there. That's something that Obama didn't do. Here are some other things. Trump sent lethal arms to Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine is trying to stay out from under the thumb of Russia right now, and this is a big issue for Putin. He wants to control Ukraine, and President Obama refused to do anything like that, to send any kind of lethal aid to Ukraine. He was too timid to do that. He was too afraid to do that. Trump has bombed Assad's forces in Syria, which Obama refused to do. Remember, this is after Obama drew that red line. Remember, Obama drew the red line in the sand, and then Putin and the Syrian forces, Assad forces, crossed the red line. What does Obama do? Precisely nothing. Trump, on the other hand, has been bombing Assad's forces in Syria. Trump has expelled more Russian diplomats than Obama did. Trump has undone the Iran deal. Remember the Iran deal? Russia likes the Iran deal. Iran is basically a client state of Russia. And President Obama sent Iran $350 billion. And Trump is undoing all of that. Be right back. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
The problem in our day is very similar to the problem in Elijah's day, if I might make that statement. It's not so much that we have rejected God, but that so many of us have made him such a small part of our lives. He's our Sunday God.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, Someone Like You, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
This is Steve Conover inviting you to listen to the Friends of Israel Today each week on this station. Here's our host and Bible teacher, Chris Katulka.
Hey everybody, the Friends of Israel Today is a unique radio show that teaches biblical truth for changing times. We do this through Q&A, timely interviews, dramatic readings from the life of Holocaust survivor Zvi Kalisher, and of course, Bible teaching.
To learn more, visit foiradio.org.
Join us for Friends of Israel Today, Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Here's some more liberal insanity. Here are a couple of twins that are being raised by their parents without any gender designation. This, as you might expect, is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They're twins. Tyler, Zyler, and Caden, and I don't know which is which or who's who, and what they are saying, we are not raising a boy or a girl, we're not raising babies, we are raising babies. They as in T-H-Y, the plural, the third person plural pronoun. Babies. Not babies, but babies, and we're going to let them make up their own mind what gender they are when they get old enough to do it. So more liberal insanity from the left, from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Let's grab clip number 2. This is Donald Trump on with Jeff Glor, CBS Evening News. I understand Jeff Glor's head might be on the chopping block. Ratings have not been real encouraging to the brass at CBS. And Glor is bringing up this issue of intelligence agencies and who Trump has to worry about. So that's how Jeff Glor opens this interview. And I want you to listen very carefully to what Trump says, because this is what I have been saying since Monday. This is what I have been saying since this thing happened, and I was kind of waiting for Trump to say it, because my point, when Trump was talking about his disappointment in American intelligence agencies, he wasn't talking about Mike Pompeo. He wasn't talking about the guys that he's got in place, the guys that he handpicked. He was talking about the people that he inherited from Obama, the people that were still in place in these intelligence agencies that were just absolute hacks. And not only were they hacks, they were his enemies. They were his adversaries. That's who Trump was talking about. And the media was just so obsessed, so rabidly obsessed with trying to paint everything that Trump said in the worst possible light that they just grabbed on this and turned it into something that Trump wasn't even talking about at all. So Trump kind of clears the air. And actually, I'm glad to hear this because Trump's agreeing with me on what was going down here. So this is President Trump talking with Jeff Glor of CBS Evening News.
Do you think any intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, are out to get you?
Well, certainly in the past, it's been terrible. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at Hayden, you look at Comey, you look at McCabe, you look at Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. You look at other people in the FBI that have been fired, that are no longer there. Certainly, I can't have any confidence in the past, but I can have a lot of confidence in the present and the future because it's getting to be now where we're putting our people in. But in the past, no, I have no confidence in a guy like Brennan. I think he's a total lowlife. I have no confidence in Clapper. You know, Clapper wrote me a beautiful letter when I first went to office, and it was really nice. And then all of a sudden, he's gone haywire because they got to him and they probably got him to say things that maybe he doesn't even mean. But no, I certainly don't have confidence in past people. You look at what's happened. Take a look at all of the shenanigans that have gone on. Very hard to have confidence in that group.
Okay, so this is what Trump was talking about all along. This is what he was talking about on Monday, and nobody was level-headed enough or clear-headed enough to even think about what Trump was actually saying and who he was actually talking about. So he says, no, I have no confidence in the people that I inherited. I have zero confidence in the people that were running the show when I came into office because they did a lot of damage. They did a lot of damage to me. They did a lot of damage to the intelligence agencies. They did a lot of damage to the reputation of the DOJ, a lot of damage to the reputation of the FBI, and a lot of damage to me. You know, Brennan was at the top of the pyramid here, top of the food chain. He's a total lowlife, words that President Trump uses. You know, and I forgot to mention this yesterday. Somebody reminded me that Brennan, remember, is a Muslim convert. Brennan is a guy that when he was working for the CIA, remember in 1976, he voted for the Communist Party candidate for presidency. Then he became a member of the CIA in 1980. It just boggles the mind that something like that could even happen. You know, if you vote for the communist candidate for presidency and you have no remorse for that, you have no sorrow for that, you're not qualified to serve in any intelligence capacity in the United States government, but this guy winds up at the head of the whole thing. I mean, it boggles the mind. And, of course, this happened where he got into the CIA. You know, it happened under Carter. That was 1980, before Ronald Reagan had been sworn into office. And Brennan, we were talking about Clapper just now, but Brennan, he told someone that when he was on station in Iran, he was stationed there, he converted to Islam, and people found him on his prayer rug in his CIA office in Iran. That's James Brennan. So he's a Muslim in a place of high power. I've seen no evidence that he's ever recanted to that or has ever apostatized from the Islamic faith. If he has, he better watch his back because that's a death penalty offense in Islam. Another reason why I call Islam the Ebola virus of culture. You know, Christianity, we do not want people to reject their faith in Christ. We don't want them to go back to the life that they had before. We'll appeal to them. We'll encourage them to read the book of Hebrews that talks about the consequences of those who start out with God, have a genuine conversion experience, and then turn their back on God and walk away. We don't want them to experience those consequences, but that's between them and God. We're not going to kill them. We're not going to hang them. We're not going to tie them to a chair and push them off an 8-story building. But that's what they do in Islam. That's why I call it the Ebola virus of culture. But at any rate, you know, Trump is talking about Brennan. He's talking about Clapper. Remember, we played the soundbite yesterday. Clapper lied under oath to Congress. Lied under oath about whether the NSA was collecting communications. It turns out they were sweeping up everything that we sent out, phone calls, emails. They were hoovering up the whole thing. And James Clapper just told a flat-out lie. He knew. He was the director of national intelligence, DNI. He knew everything that was going on. Flat out denied that's just a plain old lie. And think of the other people that Trump mentions here. You look at Michael Hayden, who's a former CIA guy. You look at James Comey. What possible confidence could President Trump have in James Comey? James Comey is a part of the intelligence apparatus in the American government. You look at Andrew McCabe. They were cooking up a plot to keep him from becoming president in Andrew McCabe's office. What confidence is Trump going to have in him? Peter Strzok and Lisa Page out there writing texts that he's an effing idiot, that he is loathsome, that is he going to be elected president? No, we will stop him. We'll stop him. That's Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. And these are people that are part of the intelligence effort. Remember, this investigation into Trump was not a criminal investigation. It's a counterintelligence investigation. That's how it was launched. It wasn't launched as a criminal investigation. Remember, because no crime was specified or identified for Mueller to investigate. So this is what Trump was talking about. He was talking about, in Helsinki, Finland, he was talking about these people when he was talking about his lack of confidence in the intelligence services of the United States. He's much better now. He says we're getting our own people in place, and I feel much more confidence in what we have going on now. Now, Devin Nunes, clip number 3, talking about the deep state and how far the rot goes, how deep the corruption and the decay and the toxic poison, well, I guess poison is toxic by nature, but the toxicity in the DOJ and the FBI. Listen to what Devin Nunes says about how hostile the FBI and the DOJ still are to Donald Trump.
They'd love to see Republicans lose. And I say that, I hate to say that, but I have to believe that the Department of Justice and FBI, the people at the leadership, they are banking on a loss by the Republicans in the fall, which is why people have to understand how important it's going to be to get out and vote in this election to ensure that the members of Congress are returned that are actively involved to ensure, because if the Democrats get control, they're going to drop all of this investigation.
So he's saying, look, one of the reasons that we need to turn out and vote, and again, this is not about party, this is about America and about national security and about the nation's secrets. He says, if you want to keep those secure, you'd better get out and vote. In November, you can't take anything for granted. I don't think Trump would get impeached if the Democrats took control of the House. I think they might try. It's not going to go anywhere. And there's no way they're going to get a conviction in the Senate. So that whole impeachment thing is just a complete non-starter, except as kind of a talking point for Maxine Waters and others of her ilk. I found a way to work that word in again. One of my favorite words. I found a way to work it in. Anyway, the DOJ and the FBI, the people that work in there that are close to the top, they are so hostile to Trump. They want to try to delay this investigation, put it off, delay it, obstruct it, until after the election, so when after the election they can bury the whole thing. Because remember, that's what they thought they were going to be able to do going into November of 2016. They thought sure that Hillary Clinton was going to win that election and that they wouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. They wouldn't have to worry about all of the missing emails and her mishandling of classified information. They weren't going to have to worry about any of that because they were going to be in charge and they could just bury everything. None of it was going to come to light, and then they lost, and now we've got this this food fight on our hands. All right, well, that's it for the first hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Democrats, by the way, are getting after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're realizing that her socialist vision for the United States would absolutely bankrupt the country. So they're getting alarmed that she is now the bright, shining, and rising star in the Democratic Party. Be back after the news.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrades' Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
Ryan DeFrades is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
From American Family Studios, episodes 4, 5, and 6 are available now at afastore.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A manhunt is underway in Hawaii for the man believed to have shot and killed a police officer. The FBI is now offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Justin Waike. Todd Pyro has more.
A Hawaii county officer shot dead, and the manhunt for his killer intensifying overnight. Authorities say officers were conducting a traffic stop Tuesday night when the driver got out and fired multiple shots. Officer Bronson Kaliloa was struck in the neck and leg, later died at the hospital. The 10-year police veteran was honored as the Officer of the Month back in April of 2014. He leaves behind a wife and 3 small children.
Republicans may be in charge, but that has not put a stop to pork barrel spending and earmarks. Chris Woodward has more.
Citizens Against Government Waste is out with its annual Congressional Pig Book on pork barrel spending and earmarks. Spokesman Curtis Kalin says there have been a number of earmarks in there from year to year, but this year the amount of the earmarks are the biggest ever for a specific earmark.
This year's Pig Book found that there were 232 earmarks for costing taxpayers $14.7 billion. That is more than double last year. And worse yet, this is all happening in the dark, behind closed doors, where Congress says that they're under a moratorium from earmarks. They claim they're not doing anything, but we have found that not only are they still earmarking and they're still putting money into pork barrel projects, but it has doubled in a single year. And this is also in the same era of same people who say drain the swamp, and yet they are filling it up with pork at a prodigious rate.
Included in this year's Pig Book is $13 million for the Save America's Treasures grant program, something former President Obama called for the elimination of in his 2011 budget.
When you could get something on the record that President Obama wanted to cut, pretty safe to say that you should be able to cut it.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Missouri will no longer be a mecca for men and their child brides. Charlie Butts tells us why.
Missouri Governor Mike Parson has signed into law legislation that establishes a minimum age of 16 for a minor to marry. Joe Ortworth of the Missouri Family Policy Council explains the reasoning for the bill from its legislative sponsors.
Missouri seemed to be becoming a haven for child brides because of the fact that in Missouri a judge could authorize any child under 15 years of age to be issued a marriage license if they so chose.
Ortworth tells AFN several Missouri newspapers were able to document men bringing underage girls into the state, obtaining permission from a judge, and then marriage licenses from recorders, making the state a mecca for child marriages from out of state.
Over a 6-year period, there were like 1,000 or so 15-year-olds married in Missouri, and the data showed a substantial number of those 15-year-olds getting married were being married to individuals 21 or older. You know, some of them were in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s.
The new law also bans issuance of a marriage license for a man or woman 21 years of age or older to any man or woman under the age of 18. The younger person would have to have written consent of a parent to obtain the license. I'm Charlie Butts.
2 kids may have had a run-in with sharks yesterday in New York. Carmen Roberts reports.
Some sort of fish chomped into a 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy playing miles apart in the surf on New York's Fire Island. Lola Polina was in waist-deep water when it happened.
I kind of thought it was a dream. I didn't really think it was actually happening. It was like 3 to 4 feet, so it was pretty big.
Medical workers say it's likely the fish were sharks. They'll know for sure about the boy's attacker when they examine the tooth they removed from his leg. Both kids suffered leg bites but are okay. Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Do you think any intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, are out to get you?
Well, certainly in the past.
I was critical of his words in Helsinki. I thought he had a poor performance at the podium, but his actions are the opposite.
For the last 70 years, Moscow has been trying to undermine our democracy, including our elections. But it only became an issue for the left and the media now.
There's no question that President Obama was more cooperative with and collaborative with Russia and the Russian agenda than President Trump. President Trump has sent lethal arms to Ukraine. President Trump has bombed the Assad forces in Syria. Trump undid the Iran deal, which Russia favored, while Obama worked with Russia in order to do the Iran deal.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Don't forget the program change coming up August 6th, if you want to make a note of it. August 6th is a Monday. That's the day when this show will be trimmed to 1 hour. We'll be on first hour only, and then Stacy Washington, Stacy on the right, she'll have the second hour of the program. So that, you might make a programming note, August 6th, Monday, August 6th is when we make the transition. You know, Jeff and I were talking on the break about the crime rate in London. It's just off the charts.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a story here that I've actually had this in the stack since Trump was over in London. So this has been, what, almost 2 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Trump called the Muslim mayor, the mayor of London, who is a Muslim, Sadiq Khan, said, look, he is terrible on terror. That was Trump's exact quote. He's a Muslim, and he's terrible on terror. And he got all outraged, got his nose bent out of joint and all that. But Jeff was just telling me a statistics, and Jeff, I'll ask you to report on that here in a second, what you saw. Crime in London, according to Michael Haverluck at One News Now, that's our own news site, crime in London persists on epidemic proportions. The murder rate in London has soared by 44%. And I'm willing to bet every dollar I've got, which is not a risky bet, willing to bet every dollar I've got that primarily the perpetrators in this crime wave are Muslims. Murder rate is up 44%, 157 homicides committed compared to 109 the previous year. There was a time when the murder rate in London was higher than it is in New York. That's how bad things were in London. And Jeff, what did you find out about crime there?
This is amazing. It's actually half of all robberies and thefts taking place in England and in Wales, those included, are happening in London. And, you know, that's quite a bit. But when you figure there's 65.6 million people in the United Kingdom and only 8 million live in London, that's quite a percentage.
Well, and, you know, the stabbings there are just completely out of control. And that's
and acid attacks.
Acid attacks, and that's a uniquely Muslim thing. I mean, it's not that other people won't copycat it, but the Muslims are originators of the acid attacks, and they're originators of these knifing sprees that people go on. And they've had 1,300 stabbings in London this year through the end of April, just in 4 months. 1,300 stabbings in London. And don't forget, in fact, they're saying it's easier to get a knife or a deadly weapon in London than it is to get a Starbucks. You know, and don't forget that the Quran instructs faithful Muslims, devout Muslims, fundamentalist Muslims, if you meet the infidel on the field of battle, strike at their heads. That's a direct quote. Cut off their heads. That's why the Marines went into Tripoli wearing leather strips around their neck. That's why we call them leathernecks. That was in response to the commitment of the Muslims they would meet on the battlefield to cut their heads off if they could. You know, here's a story from Breitbart that the London police are failing to record violent crimes. I mean, they want to try to get the crime rate down because it's so obscene. So they're just not even, the London police are not even recording violent crimes, including sex offenses. London's Metropolitan Police failed to record over 94,500 reported crimes every year. That's 10.5% of all the reported crimes are not recorded. And these include crimes of domestic abuse and violence. You know, and 57% of the folks in the UK have completely lost confidence in the police. 57% of them say that they think that control of whole areas has been surrendered by officers to criminals. These are Muslim areas, I guarantee it. Remember these no-go zones we were reading about in France? Last we heard, 751 no-go zones in France. They got no-go zones now in Sweden. You're starting to get no-go zones in the UK. So they've just lost control. You got a Muslim mayor. He is not going to do anything fundamental about that. And the uranium stockpile in Iran, speaking of the Iranian deal, which Obama helped to navigate and to negotiate, their uranium stockpile now is at 950 tons. So they've almost doubled their stockpile in 3 years. They've imported 400 tons of uranium since the 2015 nuclear deal with Western powers brokered by Barack Obama, signed off by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So they got a total stockpile now between 900 and 950 tons. So they are well on their way to expanding not only their uranium stockpile, but their nuclear stockpile. Here's more from the Ebola virus of culture. This is a report on this epidemic that is sweeping the West. You probably didn't hear much about this. This is on NBC News. They didn't make a big deal out of it. Another U.S. service member was killed in an insider attack in Afghanistan. That's where a Muslim in military uniform, being trained by American troops, goes off and kills the American serviceman, maybe even the guy that is training him. The Taliban described it as a heroic operation. One service member was killed and 2 others were wounded on Saturday in what the U.S. coalition described as an apparent insider attack. The attack took place at Turinkot Airport in the southern province of Uruzgan, was carried out by a member of the Afghan security forces. And this is a decorated soldier, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Army Achievement Medal, and Afghanistan Campaign Medal, and now he's dead at the hands of a Muslim. Another update from the Ebola virus of culture, Breitbart.com, around 4,500 new cases of female genital mutilation were recorded in England over the last year, 1 every 2 hours. Every 2 hours in the United Kingdom, a little girl is genitally mutilated in the name of Allah. So that's 6,200 women and girls. Doctors, midwives, other public health services are performing these genital mutilations. So, since 2015, there have been 28,326 medical attendances of females with FGM, female genital mutilation. they anticipate or estimate that 137,000 women and girls in England and Wales have been exposed to the practice overall. 86% of the women and girls were born and had FGM undertaken in an African, which being translated means Muslim, country. Not a single conviction has been secured of violating this law in the UK. Back after this.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
When you go to the doctor, treatment decisions may not be based on your needs or your doctor's best judgment. In the world of government programs, health plans, computerized treatment protocols, and electronic health record tracking systems, outsiders often make the rules. Your private medical data is being used against your doctor if your doctor doesn't comply with certain practices. Your data is used to see how many doctors have prescribed low-value tests or treatment. Doctors who give so-called low-value care will be penalized. Who defines low value? Not you, but you may experience the pain of the decision. This is why you and your doctor should have a private contract, not an insurance contract.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly e-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for a healthcare plan, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medishare. Medishare is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medishare members have shared more than $2.5 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medishare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings may be less or more, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join Medishare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Just hit *345. That's *345. *345.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Let me just finish up this update on the Ebola virus of culture. This was around the time of the World Cup. Again, this is dated. I've been carrying these around here for a little while. But you had riots in France for 4 straight nights after a 22-year-old Muslim, Abubakar Fofana, lost his life at the hands of the police. Riots between African migrants and the French police. African migrants, that means Muslims. That's who we're talking about here. The scale of the current riots is more extensive than we see now on a regular basis in French suburbs. So in other words, riots now are a regular thing. It's the new normal in the French suburbs. They are torching cars. We saw that. Remember, I don't know when that was, back in whenever, where you had those nights of rioting, and what they were doing is burning cars. And Fox put on the screen that these were Muslim youths who were doing this. And the owner of Fox got a call from his Saudi investor, said, I don't like that, change that. So he called them, and they changed the cryon on the screen to eliminate the word Muslim. But that's what's going on. They love to torch cars. They torched a petrol station. They torched a community library. They torched a school. And they torched several shops in the city of Nantes. At least 35 cars were set ablaze. They set a fire to Leonardo da Vinci High School in Nantes. In this one district in the city of Nantes, there is nothing left except the bank. African outlaws burned all the rest of the shops during the night. It's like Kristallnacht. It's just like Kristallnacht. You didn't know about that, did you? You know why? Because the Western media will not report it. They're covering it because if they do cover it, they're going to be accused of being Islamophobes. And they don't want to be accused of being racists and bigoted. You know, and everybody forgets the fact that Islam is not a race, it's a religion. But they don't want to be called homophobic, so they just don't report it at all. So people are just completely unaware that it is going on. A couple of other things. Iran, this is a credit to Donald Trump. Remember we had those stories under Obama how Iran was harassing our ships? They'd buzz them, and in the Persian Gulf, that's done with. That's over. There has been, in Donald Trump's first year, a decrease of 60% of American ships being harassed by Iranian vessels. So far in 2018, that was in 2017, a 60% drop. It's dropped to 0 in 2018. So that's now down to absolute 0. Again, peace through strength. Now, in the UK, there's a city here by the name of Leicester. It's spelled Leicester, but I think they pronounce it Leicester. It's 18.6% Muslim. Almost 20% Muslim. That city has passed a resolution to formally boycott Jewish businesses. And the Court of Appeals there upheld the ban. A Jewish council appealed the ban, and it got thrown out by the court. So this boycott was of any produce originating from the West Bank in Israel, which Muslims believe is occupied territory. They call this illegal. They call these illegal Israeli settlements. Nothing illegal about them whatsoever. And so until Israel withdraws from what they call the occupied Palestinian territories, there will be this official boycott. And we've seen the studies about what Muslims do as their percentage of the population grows. I'm going to see if I can. I've got that somewhere. I'm going to look at that over the break, so I'll report that to you over the break. But what they do, what happens to a culture, to a society, as the percentage of Muslims, as a percentage of the population increases, and it is frightening, And what happens, it's kind of subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, and so you don't realize the creeping nature of the Muslim population, the creeping nature of Sharia law. Here we've got it in Leicester, I don't know how big it is, but it's a major city in the UK, and they've now got Sharia law in there. A boycott on any produce that comes from the West Bank in Israel. So I'll dig that up over the break. I can't do it now while I'm trying to do two things at once, but I'll pull that up. And I want to take a minute or two before we move on to go through this column here written by a guy named Amil Emani. And this is absolutely true. What I'm reading to you is true. I have rarely read a column I agree with more than this one. And it goes back to things that I've been saying since 2009, virtually since this program began. And I was just lampooned as an Islamophobe. I said, no, it's not Islamophobia. It is Islamo-realism. Now we had a president elected by saying the same things that I was saying from 2009 to 2015. And I was just pilloried and lampooned from coast to coast. Now here's what Amil Emani says. The title of his piece, Absolutely No Coexistence with Islam. First line, fellow travelers, there is no coexistence in Islam. There is only subjugation or elimination of infidels. Islam believes in the rule of Islam, the caliphate to the Sunnis, and the imamate to the Shiites. Hence, to Muslims, all other forms of government, such as a republic or a democracy, whatever term you want to use, would represent the handiwork of Satan and infidels. Therefore, one and all non-Islamic systems of government must be purified, by Islamic fire. This, he says, is a fact. Now, Muslim jihadists, he goes on to say, live among us. They use violence as an instrument of policy. This continues to be central to Islam, and don't let anybody lie to you and tell you it is not. And he said, for the past 20 years or so, he says, Amil Imani, I have been warning to free men and women, remain a spectator at your own peril. It is imperative that you take a stand, denounce the fraud of Islam, and do all you can to prevent Islamic fire from devouring our civilized democratic system. Tomorrow will be too late. I repeat, he says, there is absolutely no chance of coexistence with Islamic doctrine. Islam, for instance, is 100% misogynist. Men are not equal to women, as Christianity teaches. They are superior to women. Women are to obey men and are to be beaten if they disobey or misbehave. Islam is racist. The Quran stipulates that Arabs are the superior race to all others, and it condones slavery. You know, we have had white supremacy in America. That was our native sin, slavery. Some of it, a lot of it, rooted in white supremacy. Fortunately, we're getting mostly past that, but it still exists. That kind of racial supremacy still exists in the religion of Islam. Arabs are the superior race in Islam. Later in the column, he says, it is past the stage of being urgent that we confront Islamic ideology and its expansionism. Close down all of its chapters across America, declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. He says it is a matter of survival. That's why I've said, look, we need to close down mosques. We can't let another single mosque be built in America if we're smart, if we know what we're doing. We need to shut down every single Muslim student association on every college campus in America. They're just simply hotbeds for jihadist ideology, where they're inculcated. And these are young Muslim males, late teens and early 20s. Worst possible stage to have them exposed to radical, militant Islamic jihadism. He says a constitutional amendment must be passed quickly, defining Islam as a hostile political force with a global totalitarian agenda, just like we did with communism in 1952. It's a global totalitarian ideology. We made it illegal in the United States. We made it illegal for anyone who believes and practices and follows communist ideology to migrate to America. All mosques must be closed down since their goal is to propagate political propaganda. I've mentioned this frequently before, but it's worth repeating because some of you might not have heard it. 81%, this is the National Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney and his group, they did a study of the mosques in America. 81% of the mosques in America either invite speakers or distribute literature that advocate violence in the advance of Islam, basically advocate for jihad. And since these mosques tend to be the most popular, 95% of all of the Muslims that go to mosque on a weekly basis go to one of these mosques. So 95% of all the Muslims that go to mosque on a weekly basis are going to be exposed in their mosque to literature or to speakers that push jihad, that push violence to advance the cause of Islam. So he says there's no time to waste. I mean, and we just need to keep saying this stuff. People are going to laugh at us. They're going to accuse us. They're going to ridicule us. They're going to try to silence us. They may even try to lock us up. The people that are trying to raise awareness about the danger of Islam are being thrown in jail in the UK. They're being thrown in jail today in Canada. And there are efforts made to throw them into jail in America on the grounds that they are disseminating hate speech. So anyway, it's the Ebola virus of culture, ladies and gentlemen, and lesson until we do something about that, we're going to be in trouble. So we need to get after it. You know, and the number of people in America who are Muslims, you know, not every Muslim agrees with jihad or wants jihad or will donate to jihad or wants to see it, but an astonishing number of Muslims are perfectly okay with it. They might not get involved with it themselves, but they're not going to object to it when it happens. They might even be delighted to see a few infidels blown up for the cause of Allah. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. Suffering is an unavoidable reality of living as a sinful person in a fallen world, but God has an amazing way of redeeming suffering for those who belong to Jesus. So when you and I encounter pain and sickness, heartache, even spiritual warfare, there are two truths we can count on. First, God is not indifferent to suffering. The Psalms tell us He stores up our tears in a bottle. And second, suffering allows us to experience God's power and discover He truly is all we need. Which is why 1 Peter 4:19 gives this instruction. Those who suffer according to God's will should commit themselves to their faithful Creator and continue to do good. You can get daily encouragement from God's Word with Anchor Devotional. Try it out today. Visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher. Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. I found that data that I told you about. I've got this document, and I find something I want to keep. I find a quote that I want to keep, or a statistic, or a saying, or something. I just throw it all. I throw it all in here. Now, here's a phrase. I just flashed into my mind. This is appropriate of nothing, but it flashed into my mind, and I've never been able to use it. I don't know. I have never been able to work it in, but I'm going to say it now. So maybe I'll get a chance to use it again. I kind of blow it by saying it.
Okay.
But it's an expression that I actually made up. I came up with this myself. As nervous as a Pop-Tart at a toaster convention.
Okay.
That's sort of like a parallel to the Bedouin tent in the stiff desert breeze and all
or
that.
As nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. That's along that lines.
Yeah, but it's better than that one.
Yeah, well.
As nervous as a Pop-Tart at a toaster convention. Anyway, here's the statistics on Muslim population, what it represents for cultural dynamics. This is...
I'm sorry.
I just like the long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking.
No, I'm just thinking, you know, if we're moving down to 1 hour, we're really going to have to figure out a way not to waste so much time.
Well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to develop kind of shorthand.
Okay.
And so I'll just give some letters, and you'll know what it stands for, and then you can laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll move on, so I don't have to say the whole thing.
Or just make faces at you from here on out.
Yeah, there you go. That'll work, too.
All right.
Now, there's a book called Slavery, Terrorism, and Islam, The Historical Roots and Contemporary Threat. This was published in 2005 by Dr. Peter Hammond. And this is based on like 14 centuries of history now. This is what has always happened throughout history when the number of Muslims in a country increases. As long as the Muslims make up about 1%, they are generally considered a peace-loving minority who do not bother anyone. Now, I think, I don't know what our percentage is here in America. Jeff, could you take a quick peek what the percentage of Muslims is of our population? I think it might be less than 1%. But anyways, below 5%, I know that. At 2 to 3%, some start proselytizing to other minorities and disgruntled groups, especially in prison and among street gangs.
Yeah, it's 3.3 million, but that's about 1%.
1%. All right. So we're at a stage where generally they're considered a peace-loving minority. Now, most people have their eyes open to this, but this is the portrait that's being painted by the media. So a lot of people think, hey, Muslims, they're just peace-loving people. Islam is a religion of peace. That just gets mindlessly reiterated by public officials. But at 2 to 3%, they start moving into prisons. They get Muslim chaplains in prisons, and they recruit in there. You don't think about that. You know, here Islam is a violent ideology. It teaches that you cut the heads of your enemies off. And who's being exposed to that in our prison system through Muslim chaplains? It's these thugs, these gang bangers that are in prison because they have a propensity for violence already. So I think we ought to be banning Muslim chaplains altogether from our prisons. At 5%, they have an unreasonably large influence relative to their share of the population. Many of them demand halal slaughtered meat. You know, we're seeing that in our schools, aren't we? Where you got Muslims rising up. It's more pronounced, advanced in the UK, but they're insisting on halal meals in the schools, in the public schools. We got to serve halal in the public schools. They demand halal slaughtered meat, pushing the food industry to produce it and sell it. They start to work toward the government giving them autonomy under Sharia law. The UK is pretty far down the road here. 85 Sharia courts in the UK where you got a dispute, Muslim against Muslim, you go to a Sharia court. You don't even go into a law court in the UK. And the goal, what Hammond says, the goal of Islam, this is important to understand, because I think he's right about this. The goal of Islam is not to convert the whole world, but to subdue the entire world under Sharia law. Now, convert, I mean, that has the idea of choice. You try to persuade someone to convert to your worldview, to your religious world. That's what we do in evangelism. We're seeking to persuade people to come to the foot of the cross and embrace Christ as their Savior and Lord. But Islam doesn't care about converting or persuading anybody, because the way they spread Islam is at the point of a sword. So that's their goal. They want to impose Sharia law on the entire world. And at 5% of the population, they're in a position to start doing that. When Muslims reach 10% historically, lawlessness increases. So they get up to 10%, and all of a sudden you're going to start having more lawlessness in your culture. Just lost my place, so I got to scroll back down here till I find it. So I will talk mindlessly here for a little bit till I come back to it. Here we are. So when they get 10%, historically, lawlessness increases. Some start to complain about their situation, start riots and car fires. Can you say France? Can you say England? And threaten people that they feel insult Islam. At 20% of the population, violent riots erupt, jihadi militia groups are formed, people are murdered, and churches and synagogues are set ablaze. Remember, we've seen in France, Muslims going inside Catholic churches and cutting the throat of priests while they're at the altar. When Muslims reach 40% of the population, there are widespread massacres, constant terror attacks, and militia warfare. At 60%, there is the possibility of uninhibited persecution of non-Muslims, sporadic ethnic cleansing, possible genocide, implementation of Sharia law, because they're in the majority, the jizya, that's a tax you got to pay so they don't kill you, that unbelievers must pay. When you have 80% Muslims, they've taken control of the government, as in, for instance, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq. They commit violence in the name of Islam or political power. When 100% are Muslims, the peace in the house of Islam is supposed to come. That's the claim, that Islam is the religion of peace. So they can say, yeah, it's a religion of peace because they get 100%. Anybody complains, has a different opinion, just cut their heads off, so everybody is in agreement. Everybody is at peace. All right, let's get back to our sound bites here. We will take your calls in the last segment of the program today. Here is clip number 6. Now, again, this is Glenn. Why do I want to call this guy Gren or something? I'm just mixing up his first and last name. Glenn Greenwald. He is talking about the election, the 2016 election. Remember, he's not really a fan of anybody. Not a fan of Trump. Didn't vote for him. Not a fan of the Democrats. But he says this, and this is what he says here about the 2016 election is absolutely true. Listen to Glenn Greenwald from The Intercept. He's the guy that's over on the left. Here's what he had to say.
It wasn't just Hillary Clinton in 2016 who lost this election. The entire Democratic Party has collapsed as a national political force over the last decade. They've lost control of the Senate and of the House and of multiple state houses and governorships. They're decimated as a national political force. And the reason is exactly what Joe said. They become the party of international globalization. They're associated with Silicon Valley and Wall Street billionaires and corporate interest and have almost no connection to the working class. And that is a much harder conversation to have about why the Democrats have lost elections than just blaming a foreign villain and saying it's because Vladimir Putin ran some fake Facebook ads and did some phishing emails.
All right, so what Glenn Greenwald is doing is putting his finger on why it is that the Democrats love to blame Putin for meddling in the election. Because it gives them a way to put the blame on a foreign villain so people won't blame them for their own shortcomings and for their own faults. We've seen this Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, her agenda, she calls herself a socialist. She's out there calling for universal health care, free health care for everybody, free college for everybody. She's out there talking about a universal job guarantee. Everybody gets a job. We'll give everybody a job. We'll pay everybody. Everybody will have a job. So that's what she's talking about. No explanation about how all that's going to get paid for at all. And we talked earlier about how the Democrats were kind of spooked by this. They figure they've got to find a way to silence or contain this woman because what she's talking about is just absolutely lethal. Let's go to clip number 9 and 10, Rob, where we have a little bit of a focus on this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here she is talking with Margaret Hoover on PBS's Firing Line. And Margaret Hoover used to be a conservative, not anymore, but here she is interviewing Alexandria, clip number 9.
Do you think that capitalism has failed to deliver for working class Americans or is no longer the best vehicle for working class Americans?
Well, I think the numbers that you just talked about is part of the problem, right? Because we look at these figures and we say, oh, unemployment is low, everything is fine, right? Well, unemployment is low because everyone has 2 jobs. Unemployment is low because people are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and can barely feed their kids.
All right, so that's the deal. Unemployment is high because everybody's working 2 jobs. I mean, there's so much wrong with that you can't even begin. But think about just the logic of that just for a second. I mean, what she ought to be saying is under the Trump economy, the economy is doing so well that people can get as many jobs as they want. A lot of people out there got 2 jobs. And Elizabeth Warren is talking about people out there having 3 or 4 jobs today. She doubled down on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Exact opposite. There's so many jobs around that people can have 2 of them. That's how rich we are in jobs. And that's what she ought to be saying. But, of course, she's not. She's a leftist, so she doesn't think. So she doesn't come up with that. Let's play Joe Lieberman, clip number 10, to show you how panicked the Democrats are.
really the point was, what's the Democratic Party going to be? I'm still a Democrat. And when I see somebody who really says she's a socialist, she's a very charismatic, captivating candidate. But when you look at the policies, those are not policies that will be supported in very many places across America. And if her win makes her into what Kellyanne Conway called the new face of the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is not going to have a very bright future.
But that's Joe Lieberman, former vice presidential candidate, and he says, look, if this is the face of the Democratic Party, and everybody's saying that, she's the face of the Democratic Party, Joe Lieberman says the party is in big trouble. Be right back with your calls. Stay with us.
This is Tim Armstrong from the Worthy Walk radio program, inviting you to join us as we study the scriptures verse by verse each day, Monday through Friday, at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, here on American Family Radio. We will study the Word of God and learn to apply its truths to our lives each day. The Worthy Walk, Monday through Friday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio.
Caring about the direction our nation is headed is one thing. Doing something about it is another. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is the premier gathering for equipping Christian conservatives for returning the culture to one that values human life, encourages families, and defends religious liberty. Plan now to join other values voters on September 21st through the 23rd. Learn more and register at valuesvotersummit.org. valuesvotersummit.org, sponsored in part by AFA Action.
Meet Dan Steiner, president of Preborn.
Jill came into our center about 8 months ago, and she was in a really difficult spot because her husband her boyfriend was incarcerated. She didn't have a place to live. She's out on the street. She came into our center, and when she saw her baby on the ultrasound, she says, I've got to find a way to do this. She changed from abortion-minded to wanting to choose life for her baby, and that's where we came in, coming beside that ultrasound with baby clothes, with housing for her. Her baby just delivered last Wednesday. It's a little boy. He's beautiful. That's the power of ultrasound.
80% of women choose life when they see their baby on ultrasound. To find out more about how you can help save a baby's life, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to the last segment of Focal Point on American Family Radio. We'll take your calls at 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Give us a call. While you're calling in, I got two more sound bites I want to play. This is Sebastian Gorka. Rob and I were talking on the break about how much we like this guy. And Gorka points out something here about that nobody seems to be noticing about the left with regard to their angst. I mean, they're about ready to have aneurysms over Russia and its meddling in our culture and elections. Clip 7.
Let me share with you an anecdote from just a few hours ago. I was coming out of a hotel in Washington and somebody comes up to me and shouts, "You're a fascist." And I said, "Come over here, let's talk." And I said, "So why am I a fascist?" "Because you worked for Donald Trump." That's about as deep as the analysis gets. They are in an utter bubble. I want to make one comment on the Helsinki hysteria. For the last 70 years, Moscow has been trying to undermine our democracy, including our elections. But it only became an issue for the left and the media now. Why, Sean? Because Donald Trump won the election. They didn't care for the last 70 years, from Walter Duranty right up to John Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party before he joined the CIA. They didn't care. They only care now because they want to undermine the integrity of that election and because they wanted Hillary to win. It's the only reason.
It is the only reason. I like the way he says an utter bubble. An utter bubble. So anyway, they're living in a bubble, the left is. The Russians have been doing this stuff for 70 years, since the end of World War II, and they didn't care. They only care now because they see it. They're not even exercising about what Russia's doing. They don't even care about that. They're just seizing on it because it's the only thing that's presented itself to them as something they can use to attack President Trump. That's the only reason. They don't care about Russian meddling, didn't care about it for 70 years. If they cared about it, they'd have been hollering and hooting about this for the last 7 decades. They don't care. They just are it's the only thing they've got. It's all they've got to try to make trouble for Donald Trump. All right, here's Tucker Carlson talking last night on his program about the fact that our Congress has added Montenegro to NATO. Montenegro.
Yet again, raising serious doubts about whether he would honor Article 5 of the NATO Charter if it came down to it. It's a cornerstone of the alliance. An armed attack on one nation is an attack on all. This time, the president questioned whether the United States should honor its agreement when it comes to NATO's newest member, Montenegro.
So the argument apparently is that because Montenegro has about 20 non-combatants in Afghanistan right now, we, the U.S., has an eternal obligation to spend American money and lives defending Montenegro's borders. That is idiotic, which is to say perfect for cable news. In real life, a defense guarantee is not something you'd enter into lightly. It's like promising a friend to take care of his kids if he dies. It's a solemn commitment, and you would not make it unless you planned to keep it. So the question is, do we plan to keep it? Do we really plan to defend Montenegro? Or many of the other NATO members? How about Estonia? How about Slovakia? You ready to have your kids die in those countries? The U.S. government is ready to send them. We've promised to do that. NATO was created almost 70 years ago for a specific and noble purpose, keeping the Soviets from invading Western Europe. It worked, thank God. But the Soviet Union no longer exists, and it hasn't existed for almost 30 years. NATO, meanwhile, is still around, and it's getting bigger. Why is that?
That is a very, very good question. All right, let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840 is the number. 888-589-8840. Want to talk about anything we've talked about over the course of this hour, including my comments about Islam, what we talked about with the Trump-Russia thing, the motivation for the Democrats to seize on that thing. So let's take some calls on those topics. Let's go to Sue in Forest, Iowa. Sue, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, you were talking about, like, at 3% that Islam takes liking to prisoners and they make friends with them and convert them, and that's going on now. That's going on now in the United States. It's even in Iowa.
Yeah, and you're seeing it all over. And a lot of this, Sue, is because of what we've done with refugees. How do they, Idaho has got a lot of Muslims in Twin Falls, Idaho, Boise, Idaho. And it's because refugee services will take refugees in, and then the government will ship them all over the country, and that's by design. This is under Obama, where all this expansion and all this dissemination of Muslims all over the United States, that was an Obama deal because I believe he wants to get the seeds of jihad planted everywhere in the United States. So you're right, Sue, it's a problem. And I think because of the media, I think Muslims are more aggressive than they might be. And I think, Sue, did you have a specific comment you wanted to make about the role of Islam in prisons?
I personally know of a kid who went into prison. He had become a real weak baby Christian prior to what he did, went to prison, and he came out a Muslim.
Yeah. Well, and it's bad in the prisons. We shouldn't allow any Muslim chaplains in the prison. We shouldn't allow Muslim events to be held, prayer services and stuff like that. We shouldn't have any Qurans in our prisons because you've got a disaffected kind of group of people to work with that are easy to recruit to violence. Where do gangs recruit? They recruit in prison because you got people that have already committed an act of violence or more than one, and they have a proclivity toward it. All right, Sue, I appreciate it. Thank you for that. Let's grab a call from Edith in Jacksonville, Florida. Edith, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yes,
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
I'm really disappointed about losing any time with you guys, and I'm going to resent it. But I like to give my opinion on Trump's comment. I think that his supporters need to stop questioning his comments by advising him to walk them back. His love for America is unquestionable. I believe him. I believe I heard him to say, I don't know why he would, because he couldn't prove that he did.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't defending Putin, but he was his own lack of confirmation about the charges.
Yeah.
I myself trust Trump, trust Trump's love for America, but I do not trust the voices out of Washington, not too many of them, because they hate America.
Yeah.
And,
okay, I agree with you, Edith, and that's a good call, and I appreciate that. And you know, Trump is suffering from something that that hit me, in the middle of this last decade, where the left doesn't care. Their reading comprehension and now listening comprehension is exceedingly low. I had Rachel Maddow going after me as if everything I said I was saying as the spokesman for the American Family Association. I wasn't. The only time I was speaking for the American Family Association is when I was speaking for the American Family Association, and if I was, I would be happy to tell you. We've got a disclaimer at the end of every single program. Views expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the views of the American Family Association. If they could read, and if they had any comprehension, then Rachel Maddow would have had nothing no axe to grind, no campaign to wage, because I never was pretending to speak for the American Family Association on the stuff that she was hitting me with. Now, Trump is running into the same lack of auditory comprehension here, in this case, on the part of the left-wing media. All right, let us go to Jay in Mobile, Alabama. Jay, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me. The Ocasio comment about the two jobs.
Yeah.
I agree. I understand what you're saying about everybody, can have as many jobs as they want to now, but I don't believe that was her point. Her point is that there's no place to work, but like Walmart and Walgreens and at McDonald's, and people are having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. And so, nobody wants two jobs. I don't want two jobs. So I just kind of, just wanted to call and say, hey, I don't support her, but I feel like she's got a point.
Yeah. Well, if she does, then she needs to express it in a different way. I mean, something to the effect that our economy is not as robust as people think. People are having to work two jobs in order to get by. But what she said in terms of unemployment is just economically, it's just as an economic analysis, it's just completely bogus. And you got Elizabeth Warren out there doubling down on all this, saying that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is right on the money, only it's worse than she thinks. People need 3 and 4 jobs. So you got Democrats saying, my point, Jay, is you got Democrats that are saying this as if they actually believe it, that this is a sign that our unemployment numbers are wrong. Okay, Jay, I appreciate the call, appreciate the concern. Let's grab a quick call from Charles in Princeton, Virginia, or West Virginia. Welcome, Charles. What's on your mind?
Sir, permission to come aboard, sir.
Permission granted. Come aboard, sailor.
Princeton, no place Princeton has one of the largest mosques in West Virginia. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But the thing about these prisoners and jails, it's common. They come out changed to Muslim affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, have you ever noticed that? And this may not be any correlation at all, but have you ever noticed about the drug epidemic in correlation to Islam? And
I'm going to have to let you go, Charles. We are completely out of time. Appreciate your call. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Hello, this is Dr. Ronnie Floyd, President of the National Day of Prayer Task Force. The Apostle Paul wrote that we should pray without ceasing.